Would you face the wrath of the gods, monsters, and deadly traps for many years just to return to your family and home? Welcome to the first part of the summary of Homer's The Odyssey. Let's follow the saga of Odysseus, who has been away from home for 20 years and faces countless challenges and setbacks in his successive attempts to return home. It is the story of a man who, after 10 years of war, spends another 10 years wandering the seas, facing monsters, gods, and nature itself, driven by a single desire to see his family again and reclaim his throne. A journey of cunning and human endurance in the face of the impossible. But before we sail across these treacherous seas, let's get to know the driving forces behind this timeless epic. Odysseus, or Ulysses, our protagonist. He is the king of Ithaca, famous for the idea of the Trojan horse. He has been away from home for 20 years and must face countless challenges and temptations to return home. Many see him as the embodiment of the man who uses his intellect to survive in a hostile world. Penelope, Odysseus's wife and queen of Ithaca. Penelope is the cornerstone of resilience in the epic, exceptionally astute, shrewd, and intelligent. Surrounded by dozens of men eager to marry her and seize the throne, she uses her ingenuity to deceive them and stall for time, staying faithful to her husband who has been missing for 20 years. Telemachus, the son of the royal couple. When Odysseus left for the war, he was merely a baby. Now he's an insecure 20-year-old living in a palace overrun by enemies. In his coming-of-age journey, he must grow from a passive boy into a man capable of fighting for his family's honor and protecting his mother and the kingdom. The suitors, a group of arrogant nobles who invaded Odysseus's palace. They eat his food, drink his wine, and pressure Penelope into marrying one of them. Led by Antinous, they violate all sacred laws of hospitality. Other figures, such as the sorceress Circe, the sea god Poseidon, and the giant Polyphemus, will emerge to test Odysseus's endurance throughout this unforgettable journey. The Odyssey is attributed to the poet Homer, who is estimated to have lived between the 9th and 8th centuries BC in ancient Greece. Unlike the Iliad, which focuses on war and rage, the Odyssey is often described as an adventure novel and focuses on what happens after the Trojan War. The work was originally composed and transmitted orally, sung by poets called aoidoi, which explains the presence of epithets and repetitions that aided memorization. The book is formally divided into 24 books and explores profound themes such as the constant struggle between the destiny shaped by the gods and human will. Little is known for certain about Homer. Tradition holds that he was a Greek poet who lived around the 8th century BC, possibly in the region of Ionia, modern-day Turkey. Some say he was a blind poet who wandered from city to city reciting his verses from memory. And this makes complete sense, because both the Iliad and the Odyssey were born from oral tradition. They were stories sung long before they were written down. Others even doubt whether he was a single person. In fact, to this day there is a major academic debate known as the Homeric question. Did Homer truly exist as a single individual, or was Homer the name given to a group of poets who compiled these legends over the centuries? The truth is that we may never know for sure, but whether he was one man or a tradition, the legacy is undeniable. Homer is considered the father of Western literature. He defined what it means to be a hero and how to tell a story that endures through millennia without aging. The name Odysseus originates from ancient Greek, and it is because of this name that the book is called The Odyssey, which literally means the story of Odysseus. Centuries later, when the Roman Empire conquered Greece, they imported all of Greek mythology and gave Latin names to the gods and heroes. Just as Zeus became Jupiter and Athena became Minerva, the Romans adapted the name Odysseus to Ulysses. Because Western culture was heavily influenced by Latin for centuries, the name Ulysses became extremely popular in Romance language countries, such as Brazil and Portugal. For this reason, in many films and books, we hear Ulysses, whereas in editions more faithful to the Greek originals, the name Odysseus is preferred. The same happens with other important names in the work. It is important to emphasize that the work does not follow a linear chronology. It has several flashbacks. In order to make it easier to follow, we will summarize it following a simplified chronological order so that you can understand it better without complications. Now that we are properly situated, let's set sail and embark on this adventure. We begin with Odysseus adrift on the island of Scheria, the land of the Phaeacians. He was found by Princess Nausicaa, daughter of King Alcinous, who had gone to the river to wash her family's clothes after a dream sent by Athena. Athena was considered the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Impressed by him and his dignity, the princess helped him and gave him directions on how to reach the palace to seek assistance from her mother, Queen Arete. Upon arriving at the palace, Odysseus was awestruck. After being welcomed with the utmost hospitality by King Alcinous and Queen Arete, Odysseus eventually revealed his true identity and began recounting his epic Odyssey. He revealed that after the Trojan War, he gathered 12 ships with his Ithacan companions and set sail for home. The journey seemed simple, but a succession of mistakes and divine wrath turned the return into a 10-year nightmare. Their first destination was the land of the Cicones in the city of Ismarus. There his men made their first major mistake. After sacking the city, Odysseus ordered an immediate departure, but the crew, driven by greed and gluttony, refused to listen, preferring to feast on wine and meat upon the beach. This delay allowed the neighboring Cicones to organize a devastating counterattack, costing the lives of 6 companions from each ship before they could escape to the sea. He also recounted their passage through the land of the lotus eaters, where his men ate the lotus flower and lost the desire to return home, which many view as a powerful metaphor illustrating how easy pleasures can make us forget who we are. One of the most iconic parts of the work is the encounter with the Cyclops Polyphemus, a one-eyed giant and son of Poseidon. Odysseus and his men were trapped in the monster's cave, and he began devouring them 2 by 2 at each meal. Brute force was useless against the giant. Odysseus then used his most powerful weapon, his mind. First, he offered a very strong wine to the Cyclops until he became drunk. When Polyphemus asked his name, Odysseus answered with one of the most famous lines in literature, "My name is Nobody." While the monster slept a heavy sleep, Odysseus and his men sharpened an olive wood stake and blinded the giant's eye. Polyphemus woke up screaming in pain, drawing the other Cyclopes of the island. When they asked who was hurting him, Polyphemus answered, "Nobody is killing me, nobody has hurt me," and the others left, thinking he was mad. Odysseus and his surviving men managed to escape hidden beneath the bellies of the Cyclops' sheep. However, the hero was overcome by excessive pride in his feat and decided to reveal his name, shouting it aloud for the giant to hear. Furious, Polyphemus sought help from Poseidon and begged that Odysseus would never reach home, or if he did, that it would be after a long time, alone and under the roof of strangers. Determined to avenge his son, Poseidon granted the request and caused much of the suffering throughout the journey of Odysseus and his men. He continued his account, and now the story took on tones of tragedy. After blinding the Cyclops, they arrived at the island of Aeolus, the keeper of the winds. As a token of friendship, Aeolus gave Odysseus an extraordinary gift, a leather bag containing all the stormy winds, leaving free only the gentle breeze that would carry them straight to Ithaca. For 9 days they sailed so close to home that they could already see the bonfires lit on the shores of Ithaca. But, exhausted from the voyage, Odysseus eventually fell asleep. While he slept, his men, driven by greed and suspecting that the bag held hidden gold and silver, opened the bag and ended up unleashing the raging winds, creating a whirlwind and generating a storm that swept them far away from home. The account continued as he told of the land of the Lastriagonians, cannibal giants who shattered 11 of the fleet's 12 ships, hurling colossal boulders and fishing the sailors out as if they were fish. Only Odysseus's ship managed to escape, leaving behind a reduced and terrified group of survivors.
With only one ship, they reached the island of Circe, a powerful sorceress who turned Odysseus's men into pigs, which many view as a brutal metaphor for men who allow themselves to be ruled by their basest instincts. With the help of the god Hermes, Odysseus resisted Circe's spells and managed to convince her to free his friends. He stayed there for a year, but the desire to return home spoke louder. Before he could return home, Circe warned that Odysseus had to do the impossible, journey to Hades, the realm of the dead, to consult the blind prophet Tiresias. There he met the soul of his own mother, Anticlea, and discovered with horror that she had died of grief and longing for him, a revelation that shattered the hero's heart, reaffirming his understanding that the glory of war was worth nothing compared to family life. Tiresias gave the final warning. They would reach home, but only if they did not touch the sacred cattle of the sun god. Everyone's fate now depended on a single act of self-control. Back at sea, Odysseus faced the sirens. Knowing the danger of their song, which lured sailors to their deaths, he plugged his men's ears with beeswax and had himself bound to the ship's mast. He wanted to hear the beauty of the song without losing his mind.
Next, they crossed the strait guarded by Scylla, a 6-headed monster, and Charybdis, a whirlpool that devoured ships. Odysseus made the difficult decision to pass close to Scylla, losing 6 men to save the rest of the crew. Exhausted, Odysseus and the rest of his men reached a new island. Despite Tiresias's warnings, Odysseus's starving men took advantage of a moment while he was asleep to slaughter the sacred cattle of Helios, the sun god. The punishment was immediate and fatal. Zeus sent a thunderbolt that destroyed the last ship, killing the remainder of the crew except Odysseus, who drifted for days until reaching the island of the nymph Calypso. Calypso fell madly in love with him and held him captive on the island for 7 years. The nymph offered him everything a mortal could desire, eternal youth and immortality. But for Odysseus, that was a prison. His heart belonged to Ithaca. He preferred a mortal life beside Penelope over an eternity without his home. His desire to be home in his kingdom, together with his wife and son, was greater than all the riches they could offer him. Until he returned home, he was merely a nobody. In the palace, Queen Penelope lived surrounded by more than 100 suitors who, believing the king was dead, moved into the house like parasites. They were not there merely to win over the queen. They devoured the herds, emptied the wine cellars, and humiliated the royal family every single day. Keep in mind that the story is set in the Mediterranean, right after the Trojan War. It was a world where the divine and the human intertwined, and where civilization was measured by a fundamental Greek concept called xenia, the sacred law of hospitality. In the work, whoever respected xenia was civilized. Whoever violated it, like the suitors, was considered a barbarian worthy of punishment. The sacred law of hospitality was not just a matter of good manners, it was a religious and social duty taken very seriously in ancient Greece. Offending a guest was considered an offense against Zeus. In this oppressive environment, we find Telemachus, the son of Odysseus. Telemachus grew up without a father figure and felt powerless before the arrogance of those men. But the fate of Ithaca was about to change, and the trigger for that change came from high atop Mount Olympus. While Poseidon was away, the other gods gathered in council. Athena, who had always nurtured a deep admiration for Odysseus's intellect and was moved by his suffering, intervened with Zeus to grant him his freedom and his return home. With Zeus's permission, Athena descended to Ithaca, disguised as an old family friend. In this disguise, Athena urged and advised Telemachus to summon an assembly, publicly denounce the suitors, and set out in search of news of his father. But after making the attempt, he did not obtain the support of the local nobles and secretly departed to visit his father's former war companions, King Nestor in Pylos and King Menelaus in Sparta. Menelaus told him he had learned through a prophecy that Odysseus was alive but held against his will. In addition to renewed hope and happiness at knowing his father was alive, Telemachus also began to understand, through the stories of glory he heard about his father, that he was an admired and respected hero. While Telemachus began to act like a true prince, the suitors in Ithaca discovered his departure and planned an ambush to kill him as soon as he returned to port. Tension was at its peak, the son in danger, the mother suffering, and the father missing. It is at this point that we learn of Penelope's famous cunning to buy time. She promised to choose a husband as soon as she finished weaving a burial shroud for her father-in-law Laertes. However, what she wove in the light of day, she secretly unwove at night. This game of wits lasted for 3 years, until it was discovered. Finally, by order of Zeus, the messenger Hermes arrived at Calypso's island and ordered the release of Odysseus. Reluctantly, the nymph had to free the hero. Radiant with his dreamed of freedom, Odysseus built a raft with his own hands and launched himself into the sea. Poseidon spotted him and, determined to avenge Polyphemus, sent a devastating storm to kill him. The storm destroyed the vessel, leaving the hero adrift, fighting for his life among giant waves. Odysseus was saved by the sea goddess Ino, who gave him a magic veil so that he would not drown. After fighting against the waves, he had arrived at that island. The account ended, leaving the Phaeacians in silence, amazed by such a journey and its twists. They promptly committed to helping Odysseus return home, and so they did. Touched by his story, they offered him the means to take him on one of their magical ships. Odysseus arrived in Ithaca, and the sailors left him on the sand with all the treasures he had won.
But upon waking, the hero did not recognize his own homeland, for Athena had enveloped the island in a thick mist so that he would not reveal himself before the proper time. The goddess appeared and revealed the truth. He was home, but he could not enter the palace as a king. If he did, he would meet the same fate as Agamemnon, who was betrayed and killed upon returning from the war. She then disguised him as an old beggar so that he could enter the palace without trouble and await the right moment to reveal himself and reclaim what was his. And so ends the first part of the Odyssey. In part 2, we follow Odysseus as he finally sets foot on Ithaca to face his human enemies. Will he reclaim his family and kingdom? Find out soon. Until next time, dear readers.